Hello. Well, today I'm wearing the same old sweater I've been wearing all winter, but I have added this little rope of pearls, which I acquired probably from my mother when she died, and I think she must have got it from her Auntie Gertie, my great Auntie Gertie, because none of us really do wear jewellery, but I think Auntie Gertie did. So I thought, oh well, I'll add a little something. Pearls of wisdom. Be nice to be wise, wouldn't it? I've been thinking a bit more about the dream I reported the other day about how I was driving along to some conference or other, and I realised halfway there that I'd left my husband behind, and I'm thinking I can't go back, I've just gone too far and he'll just have to find his own way. And pondering further on the meaning of this kind of dream, I do think there's something in the idea of leaving people behind. I remember when I was struggling with my first marriage, one day my first husband said to me, "Julia, don't leave me behind." And I said, "I'm not leaving you behind." As you do. But that's always puzzled me. What was it about the way I was behaving that made him think I was leaving him behind? And I'm noticing with my current husband, we get into these little spats where he says something and I say something that I think is speaking to what he's saying, but then he seems to take it in a completely perverse way. And his response makes me annoyed because it's clear that well, to me, it seems like he's deliberately taking it the wrong way and obfuscating, which in fact he's probably not doing, because the fact is that words don't convey everything, and we get lulled into this false sense of security that when we say something, other people are not only hearing it correctly, but they're also interpreting it correctly. And the longer I live, the more I see that this really isn't the case. He's in his own little mental world, and I'm in my own little mental world. And as long as I remain in my own little mental world, I'm going to respond to everything he says from my perspective. And as long as he's in his own little mental world, he's going to respond from his perspective. And he's kind of absorbed in some strange idea that I think is completely irrelevant, but to him is completely the point. So, if you're not aware that the other person is coming from a different place, then you're constantly thrown up against this clash of ideas and wanting the other person to understand what you're saying, and they won't understand, and it just keeps happening, and you don't know how it happens or why it happens. But I suspect that is why. It's because communication in words is really very superficial, and I suspect what we need to focus on more, what I need to focus on more, working on myself as it were, is if ever I'm listening to someone, I have to listen to what's behind what they're saying, what's coming from their innermost heart, what is it they're thinking they're conveying, and not what I think they're saying. And to moderate my responses so that there's heart coming through, so that whatever I say and however I say it, and I know I've been told over and over again I tend to sound like I'm lecturing or sound like a schoolmum, which I'm never aware of, and I don't know if it's because I'm so determined that other people will understand my point of view, or if it's just a result of the way I was brought up and the environment you grow up in. You don't realise what kind of mannerisms you're taking on board. So that's my little pearl of wisdom for today. And the other thing I wanted to talk about was out-of-body experiences. This kind of relates. I had a couple of out-of-body experiences. One was when I I suppose, going through the divorce, stress. And he'd gone off and I was in bed and I was thinking, I'm just going to stay in bed and sleep. And I slept way too long, like 9-10 hours. And you can get into this state where if you've slept too long, you're just in this swamp of lassitude and you can't get yourself out of it. And you keep kind of surfacing and thinking, I must get up. And then you go back into that swamp of lassitude. And I don't know if it would go on forever. Probably not. Anyway, I was in this state and I was suddenly aware that I was leaving my body. My legs, this is peculiar because most people talk about going up from the head downwards, but my legs started to go up first. And I thought, I'm leaving my body. I can't have this. And so I kind of drew myself back into my body and drifted off to sleep again. And next thing I knew, I was hovering, I guess, in my bedroom, looking down at myself, lying asleep in bed. And this was like a real experience. I was in a real space, but it wasn't the real space because there's my bed there, and next to my bed is another bed with my youngest son in it sleeping. The two of us sleeping next to each other in separate beds. My bedroom didn't have two beds in it. My son slept in a completely different room. So whatever kind of reality this was, it wasn't the physical reality. So I don't know, that's one experience. I think you maybe just can explain these in terms of you're making up different realities, I don't know, under stress. So the other almost out-of-body experience I had was when, in my curiosity, I was studying Aleister Crowley. I'd got a couple of his books and I was reading through what he'd been saying. And he didn't seem like a particularly sympathetic character, shall we say. And I wasn't altogether sure about his assertion that do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. I was kind of also looking at what the New Age witches were doing, and their mantra is do what thou wilt and thou harm none. So it's a kind of a modification of Crowley's idea. You can't do anything you like. You have to always consider whether it's going to harm someone. But then, of course, everything you do harms someone in one way or another. So it's not a particularly useful rule of life. But anyway, Crowley's was worse. It's like, do what you like. Doesn't matter. There's no law except do what you bloody well like. And by all accounts, he had a very sleazy existence. And he went into summoning spirits and, I don't know, was it that he got carried off by a demon in the end while he was necromancing or something like that? But anyway, I was in my lounge. I'd been divorced by then. I'd moved the family to Brighton and I was sitting on my sofa reading this book and I was overcome by lassitude. I was quite sleepy. I was in the habit of having afternoon naps anyway, which I developed when I had children because you have to grab your sleep where you can. So I lay down on the sofa and closed my eyes and, I don't know, laid the book on my chest or whatever. And I started to drift off. And then I became aware that in my dream, I was talking to this old woman who was willfully not listening to me. She was there and I was trying to express this concept to her and I was trying really hard to tell her this thing because it was so important that she understood what I was saying. And she was kind of ignoring me. And the harder I tried, the more I felt this sensation of being squeezed out of my body. My breath was becoming shallower. I was kind of lifting. And I had the impression that if I allowed myself to be lifted out of my body would just stop breathing altogether and that would be it, end of me. And so I kind of abandoned my efforts to make this old woman understand what I was saying, and I focused very heavily on breathing deeply and pulling myself back. Now that was quite scary. I don't know what that was about really. I don't know if it would have resulted in death if I had left my body, or if I was really leaving my body indeed. How does anybody know what's true in this very kind of cloudy world of otherworldliness? But what did come out of that was, it's kind of linked to the idea of leaving people behind and of not really being able to communicate properly. This old woman was willfully ignoring me, and I was trying really hard to put my point of view across. And this was pushing me out of my body, and none of it felt like it was good or right or something I really wanted to happen. So that kind of reinforces the idea that I should not try to push my opinion onto people. I need to more go within and see if I can sense where they're coming from, and then see if there's a meeting ground through that. Anyway, that's my weird ideas for the day. See you later. Have a good day.